Few ready-made meals in my freezer that I can just pull out, thaw, heat, and eat. I do find that freshly prepared food always tastes a little bit better. That's why meals that I can partially prepare and finish at serving time are so appealing. I hope that you'll consider trying my taco cobbler, this delightful Mediterranean seafood stew, or the beautiful chickpea salad spread, and you'll see what I mean.
Oh, I feel like I need to keep pinching myself. It's an amazing experience and opportunity for us, so thank you so much. It's been a long couple months. Our last show was in December. This is the first time we've actually been in the same room together since. So it's really an amazing opportunity for us and the beautiful theater and to have Rogers here, and thank you, Oh Mike, and so it's a dream come true.
I'm here with one of my best friends, Alex, and we haven't performed in almost 2 years because of COVID, and it feels really good to be back on a big stage like Meridian, and I'm really honored that you guys invited
Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. I'd like to call the meeting to order. For those who are able, good morning, everyone. For those who are able, please rise for a moment of personal reflection. And after that, we are going to have the national anthem. So please remain standing. Thank you so much. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. I'd like to ask Councillor Hill to introduce the anthem singers to us this morning. So please stay there for a moment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This morning, we're privileged to have Principal Stassen with Heidi, the choir conductor, and our choir from the Ottawa Christian School in Barrhaven with us today. So thank you very much, team. We really appreciate you coming out. Thank you so much.
Woo! Great job.
Very good singing.
All right. We'll just take a moment to allow the choir to exit and our councillors to take their seats. As we begin our meeting today, on behalf of Ottawa City Council, I wish to acknowledge that Ottawa is built on unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory. The peoples of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. The City of Ottawa honors the peoples and land of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation and honors all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. All right, I will ask the Deputy City Clerk to do the roll call now, please.
Councillor Luloff.
Je suis présent.
Councillor Dudas.
Present.
Councillor Hill.
Here.
Councillor Curry.
Here.
Councillor Kelly.
Ici.
Councillor Gower.
Here.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Present.
Councillor Johnson.
Here.
Councillor Devine.
Here.
Councillor Bradley.
Here.
Councillor Tierney.
Présent.
Councillor Plante.
Ici.
Councillor King.
Here.
Councillor Troster.
Here.
Councillor Leeper.
Good morning.
Councillor Brockington.
Here.
Councillor Menard.
Present.
Councillor Carr.
Here.
Councillor Kitts.
Here.
Councillor DeRose.
Here.
Councillor Brown.
Here.
Councillor DeRoche.
Here.
Councillor Hubley.
Here.
Councillor Lowe.
Here.
Mayor Sutcliffe.
Here.
Le quorum est atteint, Monsieur le Maire.
Thank you. Confirmation of minutes from the meeting of September 13th, 2023. Are the minutes carried? Declarations of interest, including those originally arising from prior meetings. Councillor Brockington has a point of personal privilege, I believe.
Thank you, Mayor. So I do. I rise on a point of personal privilege with respect to item 17.6 on the agenda, official plan and rezoning for 2475 Regina Street. Following the Planning and Housing Committee meeting of September 20th, 2023, where I did not participate in the consideration of this item, I sought the advice of the Integrity Commissioner on a potential conflict of interest given that my mother lives in a nearby building. I can now confirm that I do not have a conflict of interest to declare on this item under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act. While I have no pecuniary or financial interest under the Municipal Code Conflict of Interest Act, I would like to acknowledge that while this proposal may affect my mother as a nearby resident, I am approaching the matter with an open mind and will vote on this item in keeping with my statutory responsibilities as an elected official. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. Are there any other declarations? All right, I will note the other communications received and the responses to inquiries that are on the agenda. There were no regrets that were expressed. Motion to introduce reports. Councillor Kavanagh.
Que le rapport du comité consultatif sur l'aménagement du territoire est inutile. Nomination.
That the report from the selection panel, Planning Advisory Committee entitled Appointments to the Planning Advisory Committee, the report from the selection panel, French Language Services Advisory Committee entitled Appointments to the French Language Services Advisory Committee, Audit Committee Report 3, Built Heritage Committee Report 8, Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee Report 6, Environment and Climate Change Committee Report 6, Planning and Housing Committee Report 15, Transit Commission Report 7, and a report from the City Clerk entitled Summary of Oral and Written Public Submissions for items subject to the Planning Act explanation requirements at the City Council meeting of September 13, 2023, be received and considered.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Is that carried? Item 12.1 is the appointments to the Planning Advisory Committee. Is that carried? Carried. Item 12.2 is les nominations au comité consultatif sur les services en français.
It's for the Advisory Committee on French Language Services. Carried.
Starting with the 13.1, the Office of the Auditor General, Audit of the Prevention of Workplace Violence and Harassment. Is that carried?
Carried.
Item 13.2 is the investigation of the Manistee Business Improvement Area expenses. Is that carried? Item 13.3 is the preliminary report on cybersecurity. Is that carried? Item 14 is the Built Heritage Committee report. 14.1, designation of Highland Park Lawn Bowling Club at 439 Golden Avenue. Is that carried? Item 15, Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee report. Item 15.1 is the Ottawa Fire Services 2021 and 2022 annual report. Is that received? Item 15.2 is the clothing donation box bylaw review. Is that carried? Item 16 is the Environment and Climate Change Committee. 16.1, Drinking Water Quality Management System 2022 Management Review Report and Operational Plan. Is that carried? Item 16.2 is the Solid Waste Services 2026 Residential Curbside Collection Contract. Is that carried?
I have a question.
From Councillor Dedosh, please.
Can I hold for a question?
Pardon?
Can I hold it for a question?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep, okay, we'll hold 16.2. Item 17 is the Planning and Housing Committee report. 17.1 is the zoning bylaw amendment for 1081 Carling Avenue.
Dissent.
Pardon?
I'd like to dissent on that.
Okay. Do you want to hold it or do you want?
No, just dissent.
Okay.
Just dissent for me too.
Okay, so let's just do a recorded vote on that then, really quickly. Yeah.
Councillor Dudas?
Yes.
Councillor Carr?
Yes.
Councillor Bradley?
No.
Councillor Tierney?
Yes.
Councillor Troster?
No.
Councillor King?
Yes.
Councillor Hubley?
Yes.
Councillor Curry?
Yes.
Councillor Menard?
No.
Councillor Hill?
Yes.
Councillor Derouz?
Yes.
Councillor Lowe?
Yes.
Councillor Plante?
Oui.
Councillor Devine?
No.
Councillor Desroches?
Oui.
Councillor Gower?
Yes.
Councillor Johnson?
Yes.
Councillor Leeper?
Yes.
Councillor Brown?
Yes.
Councillor Brockington?
No.
Councillor Kelly?
No.
Councillor Luloff?
Oui.
Councillor Kitts?
Yes.
Councillor Kavanaugh?
No.
Mayor Sutcliffe?
Yes.
18 yeas, 7 nays.
Thank you, that's carried. Item 17.2 is the zoning bylaw amendment for 230 and 232 Lisgar Street. Is that carried? Item 17.3 is the application for demolition and new construction at 230, 32 Lisgar Street. Is that carried? Yes. 17.4 zoning bylaw amendment for 352 Somerset Street West.
Mayor, can I hold that, please?
Yep.
17.4 and 17.5, thank you.
Holding 17.4 and 17.5. So moving on to the 17.6, which is the 2475 Regina Street. I know there's a technical amendment on that, so we'll hold that as well. And there's another motion? Okay. So we'll hold 17.6. 17.7 is the treasurer's report on 2022 growth-related revenues. Is that received? Item 18 is the Transit Commission report. 18.1, capital adjustment for the purchase of additional minibuses. Is that carried? And the bulk consent agenda, is that carried? All right. So let's go back to 16.2, the Solid Waste Services 2026 Residential Curbside Collection Contract. And Councillor Kitts, you had a question.
Yes, thank you very much. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend committee. Very supportive of these changes. I just had a quick question with respect to the new landfill in Vars. I'm just wondering if there is going to be an impact to the surrounding community in terms of extra volume of garbage trucks on local roads, or will it be primarily accessed via the highway that's there?
Yeah, Mayor, we're not expecting any increased traffic to local streets. The traffic is actually going to be directed to the transfer station that's already existing, and then from there, the waste is taken to Moose Creek separately. So it's really not an impact on local streets.
I was thinking like Rockdale, Frank Henny, those, but okay, great. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on that? Is that carried?
Dissent from Councillor Desroches. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving to item 17.4, which is the zoning bylaw amendment for 352 Somerset Street West. Councillor Troster?
Thank you so much, Mayor. We didn't get a chance to discuss this at Planning and Housing Committee because the item carried quite quickly, although we did have a long conversation at Heritage Committee. For those that don't realize, this refers to Somerset House, the infamous building, which has been in a state of derelict disrepair for 17 years at the Corning Bank in Somerset. So this application's been a long time coming, and I understand there's a high level of skepticism in the community because there have been many attempts by the owner to bring this forward. I'm choosing to remain cautiously optimistic. I know a lot of people have said this is a very typical example of demolition by disrepair and by neglect, but I am quite optimistic about this proposal. I really hope we're not back here in the next couple of years because we're creeping up on almost 20 years of this iconic corner of Centertown in a really terrible state. But in the spirit of hope, I want to take the opportunity to pause and give credit and thanks to the many members of Heritage, Planning, Bylaw, and OPS who have been working on the site for many years, to the applicant team for a very handsome and sensitive design, and many members of the Centertown community who have been involved in consultations and speaking out for a very long time. And in particular, I'd like to thank Leslie Collins, Ann Fitzpatrick, and Adrian Van Wyck, who were the planning staff who brought this application over the finish line, and as well as previous councillors Diane Holmes and Catherine McKenney, who have done a tremendous amount of work on this property. So I'm very happy to support this application, and I really hope that within the next couple of years, we will finally see a rejuvenated corner of Bank in Somerset. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Troster. Anyone else? No? Is the motion carried? And 17.5 is the application to alter Somerset House. Is that carried? Okay. Next is 17.6, which is 2475 Regina Street. And I understand there's a technical amendment and a motion. Is that right? Councillor Kavanagh?
Thank you. I'll read the technical amendment first. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Leeper, whereas report AC 2023 PRE PS 0109, the report recommends amending the City of Ottawa's zoning bylaw to permit residential buildings up to 28 stories at 2475 Regina, and whereas document 3 erroneously adds additional text to column 2 of the new urban exception and erroneously omits the recommended text from column 3 of the new urban exception. Therefore, be it resolved that Council amend Planning and Housing Committee Report 15, Item 8, Official Plan Amendment and Rezoning 2475 Regina Street by replacing the text in document 3, section 3B, with the text in column 3, add residential care facility, and therefore be it further resolved that there be no further notice pursuant to section 3417 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, CP13 as amended.
Okay. And
yeah, and I have a,
should we vote on that first? Yeah, let's vote on the technical amendment first. Is that carried?
Carried.
Okay. And then you have a motion as well, Councillor Kavanagh?
Yeah, I have a motion. I'm trying to strengthen what's happening with the hold that we have on 2475 and the report. Whereas the staff report for 2475 Regina Street provides a holding provision to the zoning that cannot be lifted until the pedestrian connections are explored, and where the provision of all season pedestrian connections is of prime importance to the community. Therefore, be it resolved that the wording of the holding provision be amended to replace exploration of options for enhanced active transportation connections to securing of enhanced active transportation connections. And be it further resolved that the staff be directed to find funding to ensure all year active transportation connections for pedestrians and cyclists be created to the Lincoln Field Transit Station by the end of the first phase of the development of 2475 or December 1st, 2025, whichever is earlier, which will include proper lighting and winter maintenance. This should include discussions with staff in policy planning, working on the Lincoln Field Station, secondary plan, stage 2 LRT, and the National Capital Commission. Be it further resolved that pursuant to subsection 3417 of the Planning Act, no further notice be given. Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm just in discussions, and if it's helpful for staff, we can remove the time requirement. But I'd like to get some comments from staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the councillor's suggestion that, the removal of the time issue would be helpful. The staff also have concern as there's currently not a funding source for the winter maintenance of this pathway. There's the added complication that the pathway is owned and managed by the National Capital Commission. And yeah, it is not consistent with our current corporate standard that Mr. Gonche could speak to more. And I know planning and legal have concerns with tying that specifically to the holding zone provision and the risk associated with that. So it's something we'd be pleased to explore with the National Capital Commission, in terms of the possibilities. But the incorporating into the holding zone does cause staff some concern.
My concern is that this project relies very heavily on that connection. We have a building that is being built, 550 units, 50% will have parking, only 50%. And it's relying very heavily on an NCC path. This is very concerning, and I would like to strengthen that connectivity, because if it falls apart, I don't know why we're approving this plan, this application, because it's obviously heavily reliant on that connection. How can we strengthen it?
Again, Councillor, and perhaps I'll ask Mr. Mark to speak to this after I conclude, but while we agree it's an important connection for the development based on the TIA submitted with the application is not dependent on it. We totally support, the connection to the pathway, which would happen. It's really the winter maintenance issue and the cost associated around that we don't have a resolution to. So something we're happy to explore. It's just tying it to the zoning could be problematic from a legal perspective.
Given that the NCC has already given their permission to have this winter maintained, I wrote to them myself, that doesn't seem to be an issue in terms of getting the permission. And given that we're going to be getting property tax from 550 more units, would that not be a source of paying for this?
Mr. Mayor, maybe from my perspective, I think my concern would be that, and Alain can kind of top me up, that it doesn't align to our current practice and process from a winter maintains perspective. So securing funding as a kind of a one-off, as it doesn't align to our policy, would be a concern from my perspective.
I have to say, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, if I could also add I think one of the pieces that we need to understand before we commit to this is, while the NCC may have provided some agreement, what we don't know right now is basically, do we have the ability to winter maintain that pathway? There's fairly steep grades on the pathway. We don't know if the structure of the pathway actually can support snow removal equipment. So what we want to make sure is that before we commit to it, that we understand what the financial implications are going to be, and then who's going to be covering those costs. And at that point, we could report back once those negotiations and discussions have taken place to say if we're going to be able to proceed or not.
I want to know why this wasn't explored in the approval process for this application.
Mr. Mayor, certainly it was explored. I'd ask either Mr. Moody or Ms. Hamlin to sign in and give some background in terms of those discussions, but it was a point of discussion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd certainly invite Mrs. Hamlin to, my apologies. Mr. Mayor, I'd invite Ms. Hamlin to comment further, but through the process, we had a number of discussions with respect to the language of the hold and the strength that we attached to it. Ultimately, we landed on explore based on the potential complications of negotiating or reopening maintenance agreements with the National Capital Commission, finding a funding source, and determining what capital upgrades are to be required. We certainly do appreciate the benefit of that connection, but ultimately staff support the development We want to see best efforts made to secure that winter maintenance, but at the same point, we do support the development with or without the winter maintenance.
I can only say I'm disappointed since without the connection, it's a 1.2 kilometer walk to the station. It's certainly, not terrible, but it was done on the premise of that connection, which would be half that distance. And that's a concern that we have not made it a priority, and it's still, we could come back with a no on such a large development for a community. And it's not just the building that will be using it, but the immediate community of Lincoln Heights that would use this connection. So I have to say I'm disappointed. I don't know if we're going to have a vote on it, on the motion, and then we'll have a vote on the report itself.
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, we'll open it up to others. Councillor Desroches.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm not opposed to this in principle. I think you could go around this table, and I think we all have pathway connections and access points that need to be made over the course of this council and going forward. So, I share the interest here that these are helpful and they're important, and I think we all have them. And I'm just concerned that one takes precedence over the other in terms of the process that we have. The second point is just on the Stage 2 LRT and looking for funding. This is not a project that would fall under the budget of the Stage 2 LRT, right? This is a contract that we have with our contractor. They're working extremely hard to get the project done as quickly as possible. And I just want to confirm with staff that if this was to pass, this is not a project that would be funded under Stage 2 LRT.
Mayor, the project itself, there is a pathway in place today. The question as to whether there is any capital upgrades would typically fall to the responsibility of the developer to implement or to upgrade those facilities to meet the standard. The challenge here is the ongoing operation and maintenance and the agreements required in order to facilitate that. And that's where the ultimate thing is. So to answer the question that was directly asked, no, it's not part of the Stage 2 LRT.
Okay, no, and I just want a confirmation for that. That we need to get the Stage 2 project complete. We've had several requests for pathways to be open early, and that there's certainly a benefit that to the community. I'm just increasingly concerned about potential change orders, again, that affect the project cost overall, and ensuring that we have the maximum oversight and transparency on that. So I'm pleased to hear that this wouldn't be covered under that project, so that I can continue with the urgency that we're all hoping will carry on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Desroches. Councillor, is it Councillor Leeper next or Councillor Brockington? Can't tell. Councillor Brockington?
Thanks, Mayor. I just want to reconfirm staff's position on this. My understanding is the holding provision or the direction is, quote, to explore options of enhanced active transportation connections, which I think is reasonable. Many applications come forward, and based on feedback from the community, we try and direct staff to look into or follow up on various matters, but staff are pushing back because the amended wording directs staff to prioritize this work. And I just want to wrap my head around whether or not staff believe that this project will automatically trigger the enhancements to active transportation in the community. And if so, would this become priority work? Does this get to leapfrog other AT projects that are a top priority? Because my reading from the wording of this motion says this would become a priority, therefore fund it. Would it not be best to allow staff to explore options to enhance, which is the current wording of the holding provision, have them come back to the local councillor and go from there? Is that the main concern that staff have with the wording?
Yes, I think that is, I think you've summarized it well. The issue of leapfrogging to the front of the queue is a staff concern, and perhaps Alain may have further comments.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, at the end of the day, I think what we were looking for is basically if there is an upgrade that's required to this pathway, that the city not be the one that's on the hook for the financial cost of it. So there's still discussions that are required between the NCC, ourselves, and a developer around if improvements are in fact required, what is the scale of those improvements, and then who's going to be covering those costs so that the city is not the one having to pick up the tab.
Okay, fair enough. So, listen, if I was the local councillor, I'd be pushing as much as I can as well, but it's up to council to say we have to prioritize this project with all the other projects, assuming we can justify putting resources here. And I'm more comfortable with the wording in the current wording of the holding provision. Let staff do their analysis and work with the local councillor on how to go forward with that. So I will not be supporting the amendment that's on the floor right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. Councillor Leeper?
Thank you, Mayor. The effect of this motion would be essentially to hold their zoning up until we know exactly how that pathway is going to be maintained and built. Is this eligible for a CBC? Is there a community benefit charge associated with this development?
Mayor, I'd ask Alison Hamlin, who's on the call, to comment on that.
I've been advised Ms. Hamlin is having some issues with her mic, but she has confirmed the cost would be eligible, the ongoing maintenance would not.
Yeah, so, and I'm just wondering, can anyone give me a ballpark? I can't remember how many meters it is, because the biggest cost is probably going to be an upgrade to the NCC pathway plus lighting. Approximately how many meters between this development and the Lincoln Field Station?
An approximate number, Mr. Mayor, would be around 400 meters, I believe.
400 meters of wider path and lighting. So that's, I don't know what that is in terms of cost. Alain, is that like $500,000?
Mr. Mayor, I wouldn't want to be giving a cost just without really looking at it in more detail.
Yeah, that's probably wise. Somewhere around there. So a CBC contribution by the developer to actually building the path of some number of hundreds of thousands of dollars, plus NCC permission to plow the path, plus operational funding from OC Transpo, the city, or maybe the developer would seem to be the path forward, no pun intended. Yeah. Is there a guess on how much that would cost to maintain per year if it does wind up falling on the city to do it? Because I don't think the NCC won't pick up the cost of maintaining it.
Mr. Mayor, no, you're correct. The NCC more than likely would not be covering the maintenance because it's really not helping them in terms of the access to their network. It's really more specific to a development. I don't think the 400 meters itself as an ongoing operational cost is going to be a significant cost. I think what we want to make sure is that before we commit to that section, that one is we do have an understanding of what capital improvements need to be made. And also as there's other developments in that area is also making sure that we're not creating precedents that suddenly now we're going to start to maintain other NCC pathways in that area. So I think that's why the exploring is the appropriate route. Certainly we can commit to come back to the councillor once that exploration has been done, where we have all of the facts and understanding, and at that point we can have a path forward at that point. I can assure you though that what we try to do is basically make our developments as accessible as possible, especially by foot and by bike. So we will be putting the effort into this to make sure that we try to find a path forward. But it's just the reluctance right now is to commit without the full information in front of council.
Has the developer submitted a site plan? Sorry, did somebody answer that? I'm having difficulties hearing, I apologize.
Not yet, Mr. Mayor.
So there's no site plan on this? And then Okay. I'm sympathetic, obviously, very to what Councillor Kavanagh is looking for. If there is no site plan submitted yet, putting the hold on the zoning, I think, can only spur certainly the builder and the city to coming to some sort of an arrangement. If it is impossible, or if the conditions of the hold are impossible or too difficult to fulfill, does council have the ability to lift or remove that holding symbol by way of a vote?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Okay, that's helpful. I will cede the floor. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Leeper. Councillor Gower.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. It's a good discussion, and I think I understand staff's position, and we do have policies, we do have budget limitations, and there's no guarantee we can find a solution, but I think this is exactly why it's important that Councillor Kavanagh has put this motion forward. We're being asked to approve a development of over 500 apartment dwellings within meters from transit, but very little assurance at all that there will be an ability to clear snow from a pathway to get them to the transit station that's 400 meters away. I do think we need an extra nudge on staff, on the NCC who are mentioned in this motion to work towards a solution. It's critical that the people who will live in this building have winter access to the transit station just a few hundred meters away. So I'm glad that the ward councillors brought this forward. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gower. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to clarify my understanding of the conversation at Planning and Housing. Do we have the justification to approve a high-rise in this location without the connectivity that's provided by this pathway? In the absence of a pathway, you know, is it still justified in this zoning as?
So Mayor, the applications that are before us is a combination of both an official plan amendment and a rezoning. Had they just submitted a rezoning, it wouldn't comply with the policies of the official plan, but they have submitted an official plan amendment to have us look at those policies and provide a site-specific exception that would allow them to be considered in this case.
Okay.
So given the process that we're in, my answer would be yes, they have the ability to move forward, and staff have reviewed it and are recommending approval.
Okay, thank you. I think that is an important distinction. We are asking for exceptions to our own official plan in order to make this work, and we do want the density near transit. Therefore, we have this proposal in front of us, but without the connectivity to that transit, I do think that the argument feels thin. So I will support the ward councillor in her objective. I think that we do need to do everything within our power, and although I appreciate the language of exploring, I'm not certain that that gives me confidence that we are executing the function of our official plan and our transit objectives effectively. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Tierney.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I wish I could say this is the first time we've seen this in LA. As you know, I even have NCC pathway that is connected. It was built 4 years ago to go to Searville Station, a much underserved station that will allow connectivity from Palmerston, and we're facing the same issues. Would that be correct? NCC builds it, but they don't want to have any plan on maintaining it.
Mr. Mayor, that's correct. And in some cases, it's not that the NCC may not give the permission, it's what comes along with that permission. And that's the piece that we have uncertainty on this one.
Yeah, and that's where I struggle with this too, because while they're really busy building $24 million river houses and building pathways, they seem to hate our city for some reason and not bring along the supports to clear the pathways that they're building. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents, but I do also feel for Teresa and raising this point. I think this is something that has to be a part of the full package. You can't just build it and say, well, somebody else is going to clear it and on somebody else's dime. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Councillor Devine.
Yeah, certainly a tricky one, and I recognize the equity and principal objections or concerns over this, but I will be, to echo what Councillors Gower and Johnson just spoke about in terms of how what the Kavanaugh motion is seeking would certainly make it easier for us to turn those 500 units into LRT customers. I will be supporting the Kavanaugh motion. If this is a development with 50% parking units, a high percentage of rental units, these are the LRT customers we are looking to develop. If this is a nudge that pushes them in that direction, whether it's precedent setting or not, I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Devine. Councillor Luloff?
We should not be the ones holding up more housing in the city of Ottawa. This is us taking responsibility for an NCC problem. We should build these units and then enter into discussions with the NCC. We shouldn't be the ones taking responsibility for this. So we're going to hold up our housing development because we're not sure whether or not the NCC is going to clear this pathway. We should be building more housing. We shouldn't be the ones that are gatekeeping on this item. We should build more housing so that we can reduce housing costs so that people have a place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Luloff. Councillor Hill?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I think this discussion highlights the issue of transportation deficits in the process of developing. I know I speak from my perspective in Barrhaven, having 2,300 or 23,000 residents south of the Jock River who have been in a transportation deficit because they haven't had their BRT system that was promised back in 2013. So I completely can empathize with the fact that we have limited access potentially for 500 people that could be LRT users. But I think it does highlight the importance of just making sure that we're collaborative in this process of investing in infrastructure in places where the connectivity to either active transit or public transit is necessary. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Can I just ask staff what would be the difference in the sequence of events from here if this amendment was approved, and how much time would that? How much longer would it take? Likely. Are you able to quantify that?
It's difficult to provide a specific point in time. Where the risk comes is if we are not able to secure an agreement that is favorable to the city with the National Capital Commission, then the building will not go forward unless council decides to change its holding provision at a future date. The actual timeline for the discussion, I think in either case, remains the same. It's just whether we have an off-ramp or not.
Okay. So as Councillor Luloff said, I think our default should be towards building more housing and not putting up barriers to building more housing. And we know how challenging it is at times. We have other files that we're working on with the NCC. This is not a criticism of the NCC, but it's just the reality that with them, things take a long time. And I don't think we should hold this project up any further, so I won't be supporting the amendment. So let's have a recorded vote on that, please.
Get a wrap up?
Oh, sorry, yeah. Your hand wasn't up, so I wasn't thinking about that, but please go ahead, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Oh, thank you. This is a major development on a site that is going to save Parkway House, which is a residential home with 12 severely handicapped people. Windmill had come in and made an offer, and they're going to be looking after them. It's 550 units on what was A1 zoning, therefore considered to be green space. Quite a difference. However, I supported at planning, but the emphasis from the developer was that the site is located within 400 meters of a transit station. That's only if that path is used, that 400 meters. Otherwise, it's 1.2 kilometers to go around a couple of buildings. And it's the essence of what they're trying to do. They're trying to be green. They're trying to show that they're going to be connected. And as has been pointed out, 50% of them will not have cars because there's no parking. We want them to use transit. We're trying to encourage it. We want housing. This is not about being against housing. This is about ensuring that we have people that can get to the station that are in transit-oriented development as easily as possible, even if it's January. So that's the point. And I think that's really important. There is precedence for winter maintenance of NCC pathways, such as the Rideau Canal. That is something the city already does. There is precedence on that. So I'm asking for this to be worked out, and I feel confident that it can be, and that is why I put this motion forward. This is something also that was in the Transportation Master Plan. I asked for an amendment for more working with the NCC on pathways to connect to stations, because I could see these things coming. Especially, I've got 7 stations in Bay Ward, and NCC is near them, a few of them. So we need to work together. This is very important, and we need to make it as accessible and easy as possible. And so if there's I'm willing to listen to amendment on the timeline, no problem. But I think we need to work together to make this a successful development. It's not about holding up development. It's about making it more successful and transit-oriented. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. All right, let's go to a recorded vote, please.
Councillor Dudas?
No.
Yeah, just to be clear, this is on the amendment. This is on the amendment first, and then we'll vote on the motion. Sorry, go ahead.
And Councillor Carr?
Yes.
Councillor Bradley?
Yes.
Councillor Tierney?
No.
Councillor Troster?
Yes.
Councillor King?
Yes.
Councillor Hubley?
No.
Councillor Curry?
No.
Councillor Menard?
Yes.
Councillor Hill?
No.
Councillor DeRuse?
No.
Councillor Lowe?
No.
Councillor Plante?
Oui.
Councillor Devine?
Yes.
Councillor Desroches?
No.
Councillor Gower?
Yes.
Councillor Johnson?
Yes.
Councillor Leeper?
Yes.
Councillor Brown?
No.
Councillor Brockington?
No.
Councillor Kelly?
No.
Councillor Luloff?
No.
Councillor Kitts?
No.
Councillor Kavanagh? Yes. Mayor Sutcliffe?
No.
11 yeas, 14 nays.
Thank you. So now we'll vote on the original motion. Councillor Kavanagh?
May I ask a couple of questions related to the original motion? It's not related to this, to my previous amendment. I had promised a resident I could still ask questions
Okay,
on it.
I thought we were dealing with that all at the same time, but go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I felt that they were two separate issues.
Okay.
So I can.
I didn't expressly say that, but I normally would deal with the amendment and the motion at the same time, but go ahead.
I can understand. Apologies. Wasn't trying to hold it up. I had a resident that was asked me to ask these questions before this when it came to council. And this is for staff. Are developers and staff required to comply with policies of the official plan?
Mayor, when an application comes in to amend the official plan, by its very nature, we are amending the official plan. So not bound by the existing policies.
Thank you. What happens when someone points out non-compliance with those policies? How does this get examined? Such as the CA is asserting that the policy under 12.3 does appear to align with mid-rise development at that location.
Mayor, through the public consultation process, residents and other groups have an opportunity to bring forward concerns. Staff review those concerns, both within the context of the Planning Act, the provincial policy statement, the other policies of our official plan, and the ultimate goal and direction we're trying to achieve, and layer in an element of whether something is good planning or not, and in the professional opinion. And so, while I don't have the exact section that you were speaking to in front of me at this moment, that is the process that we go through when concerns are raised through the public consultation process.
The community association's claim of non-compliance with the official plan has been considered with regard. How does the staff review the claim of non-compliance when a community association raises it?
The arguments that were made at Planning and Housing Committee spoke to this application not complying with the official plan in its current form. I think, we agree with them. They are, their arguments are valid. However, we do have an amendment before us to that official plan. The applicant has submitted an official plan amendment that we have reviewed in due course to consider a site-specific exception to allow this development to proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Let's go to a recorded vote then on the original motion, as amended by the technical amendment, but not by the other motion, just to be clear. Carried? Okay. All right, thank you. There are no in-camera items, so let's go to item 21, motion to adopt reports. Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Kavanagh, motion to adopt reports.
That the report from the selection panel, Planning Advisory Committee, entitled Appointments to the Planning Advisory Committee, the report from the selection panel, French Language Services Advisory Committee, entitled Appointments to the French Language Services Advisory Committee, Audit Committee Report 3, Built Heritage Committee Report 8, Emergency Preparedness and Protection Services Committee Report 6, Environment and Climate Change Committee Report 6, Planning and Housing Committee Report 15, Transit Commission Report 7, and the report from the City Clerk entitled Summary of Oral and Written Public Submissions for items subject to the Planning Act, explanations requirements at the City Council meeting of September 13th, 2023 be received and adopted as amended.
Is the motion carried? Thank you. Motions of which notice has previously been given. 22.1 is a motion from Conseillère Plante to allow Brownfields grant applications at 200 Baribeau Street and 70 Nicholas Street. I'll just be clear that this is reconsideration because this council has voted to suspend the Brownfields program until we have a report back from staff on a new way of approaching that. So for this motion to pass, it would require 3/4 support from City Council, which is 19 votes with 24 people participating.
Monsieur le Maire, je peux poser une question?
Oui.
So it's reconsideration even though the report has been delayed, correct?
Yes, that's
okay.
that's
your
the opinion of
okay.
city staff, yeah. Okay.
Okay, can I speak on it?
Yeah,
yep.
Go ahead.
Okay. Salut tout le monde, j'espère que vous allez bien.
I hope everyone is fine.
As many of you know, my ward is facing a lot of challenges, but we also have a lot of opportunities, and I need your help to push us in the right direction. All of you were present when we debated the motion last December, and we were assured that the report was well underway and it would be completed by the end of the second quarter, so within 5 months. The movers accepted a friendly amendment to reflect that fact by Councillor Leeper. The report would come to council before the end of second quarter 2023. I agree that a brief pause of 5 months or 2 quarters is reasonable. Now, 10 months later, I'm a little concerned. Several times we've said that this report was just around the corner. After last council meeting, a briefing for councillors was even scheduled, only to be canceled again. The whole report on Brownfields delayed again. This short temporary freeze allows staff to complete a review that we were assured was well underway and we are now quickly approaching a full year. This has frozen 7 housing projects and 1,076 units. The 2 we're voting on today include 287 1- and 2-bedroom units and 85 family units, townhomes. As of now, these lots sit empty. And I just want to clarify that I also have reached out to the councillors where the other brownfields have been affected, and they have told me that those projects are not ready to go, but mine are shovel ready. We've all agreed that there's a housing crisis fueled by a homelessness crisis and an opioid crisis, where my ward has been particularly hard hit. And yet we're getting away in these projects of being built. And while I have no issues with anybody doing their due diligence, we have issues in my ward that need attention now, and housing is absolutely one of them. As we know, construction projects don't happen overnight. The 200 Baribeau application was approved in May 2020. It is now September 2023. That's almost 3 years and not a single unit being built. The timeline includes, The zoning application, September 2020, Brownfield application submission, November 2020, draft agreement from city, May 2022, revised draft and phase grant, April 2022, staff approval, May 2022. There was delays due to the election in October 2022, and it was scheduled for FedCo approval in January 2023. The application would have been approved in 2022 had it not been for the gray zone provision implemented because of the election. According to the developer, this pause of the program has led to significant holding cost, increased project risk due to rising interest rates, changing in market during this period, and increased construction cost. And just to give you an idea, 10 months ago in December 2022, Bank of Canada interest rates were 0.75% lower than today. 5 months ago, interest rates were only 0.25% higher. Now, 10 months later, rates have moved from 4.5 to 5.25%. On these large projects, that has a significant cost increase. And I don't need to tell you what the rate was 3 years ago. Again, this is now more than 10 months, rolling towards a year. Enough time has passed. We need housing to be built. And just to give you an idea, right next to the site that I'm proposing on Baribeau, we had a Brownfield grant done about 10 years ago. And please correct me if I'm wrong, Don, I'm just sort of going to repeat some of the statistics that you sent me. So the Brownfield grant was $1.231 million average. And on one corner of this lot, not the entire project, we have collected over $895,000 in taxes. And I did not get the data for the 2 high-rises, but that is just for the townhomes in the unit, not the 2 high-rises. So this has more than paid for itself over the years. We need a good news story in my ward, and 372 new homes is certainly fitting of this description. For those of you who are wondering about some of the nice things that are planned for these proposals, we have heritage. The proposed building at 70 Nicholas moved the old postal building and will be included in the development. We have affordable and family housing. We have infrastructure upgrades to Nicholas Street, which are much needed. And the community is especially looking forward to the upgrades at St. Ambroise Park, which, because the 2 developments are adjacent to each other, will expand with new equipment. And for any of you who have had discussions about park upgrades, this is my first discussion about a park that hasn't involved discussions around encampments or needles. If you're still sitting on the fence, ask yourself this question: why are we okaying a corporate subsidy for Lansdowne and not considering our Brownfield grants in a former City of Ottawa dump? On number 17.6 we heard today, our mayor commented that we should not be putting up barriers to construction and, quote, we should not be holding this project up. Surely apartments and townhomes don't have the same razzle-dazzle as sports teams, but they deserve timely and full consideration, especially when you consider everything outlined above. Merci beaucoup.
Merci. So I'll just to clarify, from a procedure point of view, we are voting first on whether to reconsider, not whether to proceed with the application. So technically speaking, I should have waited to allow you to deliver those remarks until after we voted on whether we were actually reconsidering the motion. Do I have that right or not? Okay, that's
Mr.
what I was
Mayor,
told.
as there was no suspension of the rules required to waive notice, the substantive motion is on the table and would just require 3/4 to pass.
Okay, I thought we had to vote on reconsideration first. Okay, never mind then. All right, other comments? Councillor Hill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to my colleague for bringing this up. I would concur, we need housing, and we need housing downtown. I think this is a textbook application of the Brownfield policy for the public good. A delay will cause costs, which will be passed on to tenants, it will be passed on to residents of Ottawa. And if our concern here is that the polluter should pay on a Brownfield site, well, the polluter is the city. So I think this is an outstanding application of the Brownfield policy, and I'm 100% supportive. Thank you very much.
Councillor Menard.
Thanks very much, Mayor. Just on the delay or not, no one's getting in the way of this application. They can build this right now. The debate is whether or not we subsidize it with public tax dollars or not, and that's under consideration of staff. So just to staff, when is the briefing and the Brownfield report expected to come back to committee and council?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The report is anticipated to rise to this committee at the November meeting, and the briefings have been scheduled for late October.
Okay, so the timeline difference there is about a month. I think that that's reasonable in terms of the staff professional review of the program, which is what we agreed to at the beginning of the term. There's no affordable housing in this development. We could get affordable housing dollars if we worked with a workable business plan and submit a new application, but we don't want that. I think what we want here is to say, let's wait for our professional staff to report back on how that Brownfield program will work in the future, and then make a decision on this application at that time. Again, we're not getting in the way of this application. In fact, this developer has hundreds of other units that have been approved in Ottawa not being built. So I appreciate the time to speak, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Menard. Councillor Luloff.
Nous avons fait de cet site une décharge. Nous avons pollué.
We made a dump of this site. We polluted this site, and it's up to us to clean it. My parents taught me that you have to clean up your own mess.
We need more housing. We need more housing close to the downtown core. We need housing all over the city. We made this mess. We should be cleaning it up. I never supported pausing this program to begin with. I think that it's a valuable program that allows for sites that normally would be sitting in perpetuity as a brownfield because it's too expensive to clean up. In this case, we were the ones that made this mess. We should be cleaning it up and allow this developer to build housing, something that we desperately need in this city. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Luloff. Councillor Hubley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank the councillor for bringing this to our attention and her very good speech outlining all the concerns with this. I'm certainly sold that we have to act on this, and I want to let the council know I'm supporting her motion. A question I have for staff is, as the councillor pointed out, it's basically double the time that was originally allotted to do this basic, straightforward report. Like it's not a complicated program, the Brownfields program, and so I'm struggling to understand why it's taking, well, now we're being told just wait another month, but clearly the councillor was not told that leading up to this. Overall, all these applications and the workload basically of planning department, Mr. Herwire, how backed up is your workload? How many applications have you got done this year that you were projecting to get done?
Mr. Mayor, thank you for the question, Councillor. I couldn't give you a specific number. Happy to follow up. Each planning and housing committee, there have been significant files moving forward, significant number of units being approved. I just want to, clarify in terms of the Brownfields and all the CIP programs, and I will acknowledge there has been a delay. Part of that delay is we're bringing forward a proposal for a new affordable housing CIP, which I think council would agree is a priority for the city. So what we've been, the largest reason for the delay has been we're looking at how we could potentially integrate the affordable housing component in some of the existing CIP programs, the economic development ones, the Brownfields CIP. So that's been the reason for the delay. That integration and connection between affordable housing and those other programs.
But CIP is different than Brownfields, right? Or are you combining the two programs here for certain applications?
No, Brownfields is a CIP program. We have Brownfields, we have a number of economic development, integrated Orleans, Montreal Road, the airport, and we also have a heritage CIP. So we have a number of CIP programs. Council directed us to review all of them, including Brownfields, but not exclusive to Brownfields. And they also directed to come forward with a proposal for an affordable housing CIP. And that has taken us a little longer than we had anticipated, and I apologize for that.
Thank you for the clarity. I thought I had heard somewhere that we were at around 30% of the applications processed that we should be approving in order to meet our targets for the number of houses to be approved this year. Is that a number you're familiar with or no?
Yes, I can comment on that, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, in terms of approvals, we're we're tracking, like we're in good stead. It's the number of permits that have been issued in 2023, and we are tracking below. But again, the city doesn't build housing. That's the development industry, and that's affected by interest rates and many other factors, not exclusively approvals.
Thank you for pointing that out, that there's many different factors. What would be the impact if council today supported our colleague here with this one application, knowing that your report's coming in a month, so there shouldn't be any other brownfield applications coming forward until your report comes out? Do you foresee any significant negative impacts if we approve this now? Because like the councillor's area desperately needs housing, and these applications are ready to go. So as I've stated at the outset, I'm leaning towards supporting the councillor. I think others around the table are as well. Can you raise any red flags if we go ahead and do this?
I would just point out that, the agenda for the next committee meeting has already been released, so we would have to, the reports are not ready. The program's been suspended. So I'm not certain we could have those reports ready for next Tuesday. So unless there's a special meeting, they would in effect come at the November meeting as well.
Okay, that does answer my question. If we approve this application, does it have a negative impact on your workload, any of the stuff that you're doing? Or can we approve this one with the understanding that we're not going to consider any others until we've debated your report?
So, Mr. Mayor, my understanding of the wording is to bring these two forward for approval. We would not be approving them at council today. The direction, as I understood it, would be to bring them forward to the next Finance and Corporate Services Committee for consideration.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Herway. Thank you. That's my questions, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hubley. Councillor DeRuse?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to repeat what my councillor colleague has been asking question, but I would support Councillor Plante on her motion. And as councillor, we look around the table and we cannot nitpick which application we try to support and move forward or not. Either we need housing or we don't need housing. And to sum the discussion, like 1 month here and 1 month there, this council like to delay things. But you know what? Matter of fact is we need housing today and we need to act as soon as we can. And this is a good project and Councillor Plante is community and area, and I will be very happy to support it. Thank you very much for bringing it forward.
Thank you, Councillor DeRuse. Councillor Leeper?
Thank you, Mayor. Question, if the report comes forward in roughly a month that recommends an end or a significant modification to the Brownfield program, is it still open to Councillor Plante at that point to suggest an exception so that the report would be amended, or the report recommendations would be amended such that they would not apply to a specific property? Maybe that's for Caitlin or for...
Yes. Mr. Mayor, each application needs to be taken on a case-by-case basis. Generally, when council has made a decision on a policy, the same council cannot revisit that policy. However, motions for exceptions to a policy for a site-specific consideration have been brought forward and dealt with. So the city, interim city clerk and city solicitor may wish to add to that answer.
So it would be in order for Councillor Plante to make a motion at the time we consider the report recommendations for a site-specific exception, which I think I might recommend in this case. The threshold for a win on that would only be 50% as opposed to the 3/4 required today because this is reconsideration. And B, we would have a much better understanding, I think, of staff rationale for whatever recommendations they make. So that's where I'm leaning at the moment, but I see a number of hands up. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Leeper. Councillor Gower?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Two things. I'm told by the councillor that 70 Nicholas does include affordable housing, which is important. The other thing is, we're not approving the grant today. We're asking for a report to come forward that then we can consider. And I think this is all about fairness and certainty for the applicants. It's true that they could move forward, but it's important that they know whether or not this grant will be available. They've been waiting for this decision from council for months and months and months. And if the grant isn't going to be available, I think they deserve to know that or if council is going to reject the grant, they deserve to know that as quickly as possible, know our decision, because they can move forward, but it's going to probably mean a significant change to the development they've proposed. It's going to mean re-entering the zoning and site plan process, which will add months and months again to their ability or to get permits to get this built. So I think it's fair in this case that we do direct staff to bring us a report so we can consider it and give the applicants a clear answer as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gower. Councillor Curry?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I find this one very challenging to figure out what to do, because I don't like it that people went down a road believing they would get a grant and now they've had the rug pulled out from under them. So I don't like that concept. But I also feel like if a report's coming in a couple of weeks, that might give us more information, and that the councillor then would potentially be able to reintroduce this, as Councillor Leeper is pointing out, then that may be a more informed decision on our part. I looked at this development. It is obviously, as Councillor Gower said, affordable housing. It's an excellent development. I think it should go ahead. The challenge is right now we also have a new piece of information, in that the federal government has introduced that reduction in the GST costs, which makes so many more applications affordable. And every developer I've talked to, they've said that is the difference maker for them. So they're not necessarily looking for grants from the city. Which, when we talk about who needs to help out when it comes to affordable housing, we always talk about other levels of government. So I'm very torn on this, but I feel like if we can just get the report in front of us in the next few weeks and see what it says, then we can have a more informed decision, and we can contemplate the GST impact. So I don't think I'm telling you how I'm voting yet. I'm just telling you, I think this is complex. I don't think this is a simple thing, and it's whether, every area needs affordable housing. Every area needs additional housing. I think there are a couple of nuances to this that makes it not as simple as we may think. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. I'll just say a few things, and then Councillor Plante, you can wrap up. I'll vote against this because I did run on a promise to revisit the Brownfields and the CIP programs. I heard throughout the city many concerns raised by residents about specific projects that were approved in the previous term of council, and the idea that taxpayer dollars were going towards those projects. We are weeks away from having a report. I know it's taken longer, and that's regrettable. City staff are very busy, obviously dealing with a lot of different things. And I think part of the reason that it's taken longer is that there has been an effort to incorporate more and more input, because this is the whole issue of brownfields and CIP is an important one for all councillors. And I know that people have strong feelings about it. I've had conversations with many of you about it. So it's taken a little bit longer, but we are almost there. And I think we have taken a decision as a council to suspend the Brownfields program until we have more information. We will get more information. And as Councillor Leeper has pointed out, it does not rule out another motion at that time as an exception to whatever is proposed in the report. So based on my campaign commitment and based on the feedback that I heard from Ottawa residents and the fact that the report is only a few weeks away, I'll be voting against this. Councillor Plante?
Oui, merci beaucoup. I just kind of wanted to clear up a few things that people messaged me about and were saying throughout. So there's two developments here. There's one at 70 Nicholas and one on Baribeau Street. The one at 70 Nicholas does include affordable housing. It also includes student housing, so we can remove some of the pressure from Sandy Hill and have more student housing closer to the Byward Market, which is really a relief for a lot of people and much, much needed in that area. I also want to clarify, Mr. Herwire, my understanding is the report will be recommending that the developments that did fall into this gray zone from between the election to when we voted, those developments will be recommended to be included in the Brownfield grant, correct? I don't want to give the preview of the report, but my understanding is this is the case, correct?
Mr. Mayor, the report has not been finalized. It will be part of the consideration of the report. Right. To the mayor's point, it will be on the table for council's consideration and deliberation.
But it will recommend that the I mean, in general, we do recommend stuff that falls between an election gray zone, that they do proceed ahead, correct?
Mr. Mayor, all I can say at this point is that will be addressed in the report. As the report is not final at this point, I can't speak to the specific word.
Okay, merci. I also wanted to clarify that the taxes we make off brownfields more than pay for the grant themselves. These are not, some sort of big, grant that we give developers and they run and go on holiday in Maui. That's not really the point. The point is to clean up the site and encourage people to clean up these sites, which right now, as of now, are standing empty with these shovel-ready projects ready to go. I also wanted to talk, I do agree, we're saying things like the developer can then redo their application, we can bring it forward in the future. I just really want to get these projects off the ground. I want to get some development going that had significant community consultation, that is ready to go, that the developers are just sort of waiting. These are, again, not huge developers. These are smaller developers. And last, I really appreciate you bringing up the GST point, Councillor Curry. I think that's an excellent point. But again, all of these reconsiderations and these new things that everybody is announcing and all these shiny bells and whistles, these just add more delays. So I would like to get these projects off the ground. I would like to get them going. I agree that, often reports are delayed, but the report could potentially be delayed again. It could be sent back, correct, for more corrections, or is that something that could happen?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, that's not the intention. I can't speak with 100% certainty what could or could happen, could not happen, but certainly it is staff's intention to bring it forward at the November meeting.
Great. And last, I just wanted to remind everyone that prior to this vote being taken, we had talked about not putting up barriers and not holding projects up for development. And I don't really understand the difference between supporting something like Lansdowne and then not supporting something like affordable housing, heritage, infrastructure repairs, family housing, et cetera. But I will leave that up to this council to vote on. Thank you very much.
Merci, Conseillère Plante. So we'll go to a recorded vote then, please.
Councillor Dudas.
Yes.
Councillor Carr.
Yes.
Councillor Bradley.
No.
Councillor Tierney.
Yes.
Councillor Troster.
No.
Councillor King.
Yes.
Councillor Hubley.
Yes.
Councillor Curry.
No.
Councillor Menard.
No.
Councillor Hill.
Yes.
Councillor DeRuse.
Yes.
Councillor Lowe.
Yes.
Conseillère Plante.
Oui.
Councillor Devine.
Yes.
Councillor DesRoches.
No.
Councillor Gower.
Yes.
Councillor Johnson.
Yes.
Councillor Leeper.
No.
Councillor Brown.
Yes.
Councillor Brockington.
Yes.
Councillor Kelly.
Yes.
Councillor Luloff.
Yes.
Councillor Kitts.
Yes.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Mayor Sutcliffe.
No.
18 yeas, 7 nays.
Okay, so that it's defeated on reconsideration then? Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that is not 3/4 of members present and voting.
Okay, thank you. Item 22.2 is a motion from Councillor Kitts regarding the province, regarding surplus proceeds from the tax sale, request to the province. Councillor Kitts, did you want to speak to that?
I apologize, I don't have it in front of me. If you could get it up on the screen. But yeah, no, this is, I think this is a good news story for us. Should it go through? There was a change made and this would keep more money in city coffers. So I think that's all I have to say about it. I can read I read it out at the last meeting. So therefore be it resolved that City Council requests that the provincial government reverse the decision made by the previous government and reinstate the legislation that permitted municipalities to apply for and retain surplus proceeds from tax sale in their jurisdictions. Thank you.
Okay, is the motion carried?
Carried.
Thank you. Councillor Brown has a motion on the extension of antenna concurrence for 5440 Fernbank. Councillor Brown?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Colleagues, this is extremely straightforward. Staff simply don't have the delegated authority to continue with the delegated authority provided back when this application came forward in 2019. Councillor Gower and I are simply looking to extend the concurrence until the 14th of July 2025, and it's for the proposed construction of a cell tower near Stittsville in Canada, but happens to be in my ward. Therefore be it resolved that the municipal concurrence for the proposed antenna system at 5440 Fernbank Road be extended by 24 months, lapsing on the 14th of July 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Is the motion carried? Councillor King has a motion on the New Edinburgh Field House Wi-Fi installation. Councillor King?
Thank you, Your Worship. This motion allows community funds from a community account to be approved for the installation of Wi-Fi equipment in the New Edinburgh Field House. The Community Association, in conjunction with the Community Council, are working on several projects, including emergency management in the field house, and so the amenity would be worthwhile. And this motion also provides the authority to the General Manager of Recreation, Cultural and Facilities Services to be delegated authority to authorize future expenditures from that community account into the community facility. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor King. Councillor Brockington?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few questions. Is the field house a City of Ottawa facility, or is it owned and operated by this community entity?
Mr. Mayor, this is a city-owned facility.
Okay, several years ago, the City of Ottawa put in Wi-Fi at a number of field houses and community centers. We were waiting for some upper-level government grant money to see this go through. Why would we expect a community council to pay for this cost when it should be the City of Ottawa that's paying for it?
Mr. Mayor, there have been 3 phases of Wi-Fi installation by the city. Generally, we have started with large recreation facilities and admin buildings to provide maximum access to the public. In the case of this building, it is a small park field house and therefore has not been at the top of the priority list. My department, as well as IT, are looking at a future phase and an approach to continuing to expand this. In this particular case, the community association wanted to go ahead and get Wi-Fi installed sooner rather than later, and so this is an initiative to do that using a special fund that is intended for this community.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm certainly not going to vote against. I just think on principle, this should be a cost that the city bears and not on the community. But I appreciate the answers to those questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. Is the motion carried? Oh, sorry, didn't see your hand up. Councillor Luloff?
I got booted out of the Zoom, so sorry I couldn't raise my hand there. I don't support filtering the internet at this site. In fact, I don't support filtering the internet at all. I support the unrestricted access to information and lawful use of the internet. I believe that any filtering that's being done should be filtering things that are illegal, that are illegal. And defined by the Supreme Court of Canada as hate speech or otherwise. Privacy screens can be used to ensure that customers are accessing information that cannot be viewed by others. But I think that by filtering our internet, we are restricting access and restricting people's access to information. So I'd like to dissent on the clause on filtering on principle. And vote yes for the remainder of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Luloff. Councillor Lowe?
Thank you. And my colleague there actually raised a
raised an interesting point that sparked a question to me. The filter that's mentioned in that clause, is it similar or the same as a city's policy on responsible rousing or whatever it's called?
Mr. Mayor, I'm just checking with my CIO right now to get that information, so if you give me a couple minutes, I'll get back to you.
Thank you.
You're okay then? Yeah, okay. All right, so I know Councillor Luloff wants to dissent on the second, be it resolved, is that right? Is the other than that, is the motion carried? Councillor Leeper, you're going to dissent on that as well? Pardon?
Point of order, can we get the answer to that question to know if it's the same filtering as what we currently have or not before we make a decision on that?
I think, everyone's looking at me. I think it's a good idea to wait.
How long will it take to get that answer?
If you don't mind, I'll just excuse myself and go call right now. That's okay?
Okay, we can come back to this issue then. All right. Item 22.5 is a motion from Councillor Leeper to call a joint finance and corporate services and planning and housing committee meeting. Councillor Leeper.
Thank you very much, Mayor. So the title is self-explanatory. I understand that we need to pass a council motion to strike the joint committee on this because we're going to consider both the Planning Act considerations as well as the financial ones. So in order to give the joint committee the ability to make Planning Act related decisions, this motion is coming forward. Therefore, be it resolved that council delegate authority to a joint planning and housing and finance and corporate services committee meeting to consider the Lansdowne Partnership Plan authorization to proceed to redevelopment.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Leeper. Is the motion carried?
Sorry, no, Mayor.
Okay, sorry, I didn't see your hand up, so I'm sorry. I didn't know what the plan was. Go ahead.
Okay, so thank you. So I have a motion to amend the Leeper motion. And so I can read it in. Be it resolved that the Leeper-Sutcliffe motion be amended to add the following, that the Joint Planning and Housing Committee and Finance and Corporate Services Committee meeting be scheduled for no earlier than November 1st, 2023. And I understand we've had a conversation with the mayor's office since then. So if you're able to let us know what the commitment might be for that timing, we might not need a vote.
Sure. I mean, the current, I'm okay with having a joint committee meeting on or about November 3rd and bringing it to council shortly after that. So that's fine. So you.
So thank you for that commitment. I appreciate it. So if it's the will of council to move forward with that commitment, then you're fine without a vote.
Okay. All right. Is it carried then?
Or it's carried, basically.
Carried as amended?
Okay, great.
Thank you. Item 22.6 is a motion from Councillor Menard. Oh, sorry, we didn't, is the main item then carried as amended? Carried? Thank you. Okay, Councillor Menard?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor. The motion, I'll just read the therefore be it resolved because this was given notice last time. It's that city staff identify in the forthcoming Lansdowne 2.0 report what decision points will be available to committee and council up to and including the decision to withdraw that can integrate and respond to the information from the OAG on the viability and risks associated with Lansdowne 2.0. And I think just given the motion that just passed, Mayor, it might just be best to have some questions and answers around this with staff and the AG. I have a number of questions that I'd like to ask, and just depending on the discussion here today, I may withdraw this motion just given the discussions that we're having and the email that was sent out this morning by yourself. So it's okay with you, I'll just ask questions and then maybe others have questions too. Thanks very much. So just to clarify to the Auditor General, is there an agile audit of Lansdowne 2.0 going to take place by the Auditor General's office?
Mr. Mayor, yes, that is the plan. We are currently in the process of onboarding our consultants and our experts in order for us to commence an agile audit on Lansdowne 2.0.
Okay, thanks so much. And what is the purpose of an agile audit versus a, say, traditional audit?
Mr. Mayor, technically both types of audits have the same purpose. In our particular case, we're here to ensure accountability as well as stewardship of public funds. So those are the two items we generally focus on when it comes to our audits. With these types of longer projects, we aim more for an agile audit. So it allows us to review risks at the onset of a project and continue to readjust that risk assessment to determine where our work may provide the most value to the city and to the residents.
Okay, thank you for that. And then in terms of timing, we just heard the report would likely be considered on November 3rd at committee. Would that agile audit that you're doing report back before November 3rd or after that date in all likelihood?
Mr. Mayor, a risk assessment process does take some time, so we would not even be completed our risk assessment by the time that report would be considered by the joint committee and then by council. I would not anticipate any reporting from my office on that matter until 2024 at the earliest.
Okay, that's helpful information. Obviously, it's a large report, likely the most, like the largest financial decision this council will make this term. So just, I guess, to city staff on the project, how do you anticipate incorporating the Auditor General's recommendations if council has already either approved or not approved of the report in front of them in November?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor. So certainly the report will seek direction from council in terms of, taking that next steps. But there will be a number of further touch points with council that are detailed in the report, both on the procurement model, our requests for expression of proposals on the build-overs. There's, I believe, 4 different touch points that would follow the November 3rd meeting and subsequent council meetings. So there are a number of other pieces along the way, and we would certainly look forward to the Auditor General's participation and any advice or recommendations along the way.
Okay, and do you anticipate working with the Auditor General to integrate those timeline decision points with the potential reporting schedule that the AG may have in the future? I guess what I'm getting at is we wouldn't want to make such a large decision without having some ability to change it based on the valued reporting of our professional Auditor General. So how do you see that timeline integrating in with the AG's timeline of conducting the risk assessment and then the following agile audit?
So certainly we'd be seeking direction to take, next steps this November. But as mentioned, there's a lot, of work to happen on Lansdowne, assuming council gives direction to proceed. So we would certainly coordinate with the Auditor General's office in terms of those timelines. I know, we're having a briefing session with her this afternoon. So yes, we would integrate that work together.
That's helpful. And just the last question from me on this, Mayor, is with regard to the email that was sent around this morning, it mentions the final decision being around legal agreements. And I just wanted to get a sense of, do these legal agreements have a report that would go to committee and then council, a formal report for decision on those legal agreements? If you can just be clear about how those would work.
So, Mr. Mayor, I think that issue will be spelled out in the report that's coming in terms of, is that a further checkpoint that council wants, staff to come back with, or is that authority given to the city manager, city solicitor to make those, those final changes to the existing agreements and any new agreements?
Okay, thank you for that. And sorry, I know I said last question, but just, I guess, back to the AG, do you feel confident that your reports will have a value for council based on where the timeline is now with that large report coming in November, will they still be useful and implementable based on potential recommendations that you may come forward with?
Mr. Mayor, sorry, Councillor, can you repeat that?
So we know the large staff report, which will have major decisions in November, early November, will come forward, and that the report will come, your reporting will come later than that. Do you still feel that your reporting will have the ability to influence the decisions so that we can make sure we're doing value for money and a risk assessment in time for a potential final decision on Lansdowne 2.0?
Mr. Mayor, unfortunately, as we haven't started our audit, I'm not aware of all the key milestones and the key dates. So first and foremost, I can't speak to that. I would also state that, you know, our reports aren't necessarily meant to change course or change direction. I can't speak to what we may or may not find or recommend in those particular audits. So it would be very presumptuous of me to speak to that, Councillor. Unfortunately, I don't think I can answer that question.
Okay, in an ideal world, will we have had that agile audit accompanying this large report to committee and council if we had had the time and the funds previously to do it? Or is this a preferred timeline now?
In an ideal world, yes, we would have loved to have started earlier. That being said, we don't work in an ideal world. I don't have unlimited resources at my disposal. And so from that perspective, in an ideal world, we would have gotten you more information sooner. But as we do with many of our audits, a lot of our audits are more future looking. They're not necessarily real time. So we do our best to provide value in a combination of both regular style audits and agile audits.
Thank you. And I understood from staff that staff are going to incorporate those decision points in the future, whether it's approved or not in November, into the report and reference the Auditor General's reporting on this issue. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, certainly the report will detail those future touch points should council give staff the direction to proceed with Lansdowne 2.0. That will be fully detailed in the report. And certainly I'd like to have further discussions about how best to integrate the OAG review.
Okay, thanks very much, Mayor. I'm happy to, unless there's other questions, happy to withdraw the motion based on that confirmation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Motion is withdrawn. Thank you, Councillor Menard. Councillor Menard, your motion is the next one as well, and there's a replacement motion in this case, right?
Yes, thanks very much, Mayor, and thanks to the original seconder and also Councillor Brockington and new seconder of this motion, Councillor Kitts. I'll read it out in its totality. Whereas the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing approved the City of Ottawa's new official plan in November 2022, and whereas the official plan was drafted through a comprehensive process that included the development of a growth management strategy and careful consideration of how and where the City of Ottawa should grow up to 2046, and whereas the growth management strategy included the categorization of lands into 3 groups, with staff recommending inclusion of Category 1 lands, exclusion of Category 2 lands, and further study of Category 3 lands. And whereas Council approved the addition of 1,281 hectares of land to the city's urban boundary, which included lands from all 3 categories, and whereas the Ministry approval of the City of Ottawa's official plan further expanded the urban boundary to include all lands from all 3 categories, and whereas the parcels added by the province are designated in the official plan as agricultural resource area. Excuse me. It was not evaluated, nor were any submissions made regarding those lands throughout the development of the growth management strategy and official plan. And whereas Ontario's Auditor General investigation into urban boundary expansions in the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area have raised questions about the process with which new lands may have been considered, including the methodology by which these parcels were added by the province to Ottawa's urban boundary. Therefore, be it resolved that Council requests that the Mayor write to the Ontario Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Paul Calandra, to request that the expansion lands that the province added to Ottawa's urban boundary in 2022 be reviewed. Thank you, Mayor.
Did you want to speak to it?
I think we've obviously had a lot of dialogue on this in the last couple of days, and appreciate the collaboration to get to this point, which I understand is broadly supportable by Council, and looking forward to the review by the province of this on these those extra lands that were added without consultation about a year ago. Thank you.
Okay. Is the motion carried? Thank you. Motions requiring suspension of the rules of procedure. Councillor Troster.
Thank you. I have two.
Yes, you have two. One on road closures for the renaming ceremony for Kichizibi Mikan.
That the rules of procedure be suspended to consider the following motion. Whereas the National Capital Commission has renamed the former...
Sorry, I should actually, on suspension of the rules, is that carried?
Oh, carried.
Yes.
Great.
Okay, go ahead.
Whereas the NCC has renamed the former Sir John A. Macdonald Parkway as Kichizibi Mikan, and whereas the National Capital Commission will be holding a ceremony to unveil new signage reflecting the new road name, and whereas the National Capital Commission has requested to close the westbound lanes of Wellington Street between Booth Street and Vimy Place to facilitate the closure of the westbound lanes of Kichizibi Mikan to hold this event, and whereas the road closure would be in effect between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. on Friday, September 29th, 2023, and whereas the City of Ottawa special events on city streets bylaw prohibits road closures before 6 p.m. Monday to Friday, therefore be it resolved that Council approve the full closure of the westbound lanes of Wellington Street between Booth and Vimy Place between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. on September 29th, 2023 to facilitate the renaming ceremony of Kichizibi Mikan, providing it meets the requirements, conditions, and approval of traffic services. And I hope you can join us. It should be a very meaningful ceremony. Thank you.
Is the motion carried?
Carried.
Thank you, Councillor Troster. And you have another motion regarding closing a portion of Flora Street for the Flora Fest festival, which of course could only take place on Flora Street because of its name. So on suspension of the rules, is that carried?
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas the Flora Hall Brewing Company hosts an annual street festival to provide expanded programming and seating for patrons titled Flora Fest, and whereas Flora Fest takes place on a section of Flora Street between Kent Street and Bank Street, and whereas the organizer has requested to close a section of Flora Street between Kent and Bank on Friday, October 6, 2023 to facilitate setup of the event while maintaining local access to residents via two-way traffic entering at Kent Street. And whereas the road closure would be in effect from 2 p.m. Friday, October 6, 2023 to 6 p.m. on Sunday, October 8, 2023. And whereas the City of Ottawa special events on city streets bylaw prohibits road closures before 6 p.m. Monday to Friday, therefore be it resolved that Council approve the closure of Flora Street between Kent and Bank from 2 p.m. on Friday, October 6, 2023 to 6 p.m. on Sunday, October 8, 2023 to facilitate Flora Fest 6, providing it meets the requirements, conditions, and approval of traffic services.
Thank you, Councillor Troster. Councillor Luloff.
Please let it be known that Flora Hall Brewing Company can do no wrong. I support this wholeheartedly. They're incredible.
They are excellent. They have good beer and they're great community members. So come join us.
Thank you, Councillor Luloff. Is the motion carried? Okay, let's go back to item 22.4 on the New Edinburgh Fieldhouse Wi-Fi installation. And Mr. Rogers?
Yep. Mr. Mayor, so I can confirm we do have filters on our Wi-Fi access that we own from the city perspective. I had to take a few minutes to call because it's quite complex. So that is true for personal devices and your work phones as well. So the public is restricted in terms of what sites they can access, which aligns to the Privacy Act. And we do have a list of sites that are blocked. So my team is working on that, and we can certainly circulate that to council just for information. So yes, we do have filters on our Wi-Fi to protect against use of inappropriate sites, if you will.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions related to that, Councillor Luloff?
Who determines what is appropriate and when is it appropriate?
So we align it to the Privacy Act, and then from there, that's what we align up to. So pornographic material, things like that are the obvious ones that are blocked.
Councillor Lowe?
Thank you. So is the filter, like in the motion, it states that the CCC will be responsible for ensuring that filter. Is that filter exactly the same as ours, or is theirs going to be separately administered, so their own list of sites or whatever?
Well, the intent, Mr. Mayor, the intent would be to correlate with ours, and that's why at the end of that therefore be further resolved. We speak to executive between the city and those, so they align with our policy.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. So is the motion carried?
Dissent on filtering the internet.
Okay. Dissent on the second item. The second therefore be it resolved. Is that right? And Councillor Luloff, Councillor Leeper, Councillor Brockington?
Councillor Darouz.
Councillor Darouz. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So Councillor Leeper, Councillor Darouz, Councillor Luloff, correct? Got everyone? Okay, thank you. There are no notices of motion that I'm aware of. There is a notice of intent from the Ottawa Community Lands Development Corporation to bring an annual report for consideration at the council meeting on October 11th. Motion to introduce bylaws. Councillor Kavanagh.
Que le règlement énuméré à l'ordre du jour sous le titre Motion portant présentation du règlement, 3 lectures soit lues.
3 readings be read and adopted.
Confirmation bylaw. Councillor Kavanagh.
Que le règlement suivant soit lu
That
et
the
adopté.
following rule be read, ratifying the deliberations of the council on 27th of September 2023.
There are no inquiries, so motion to adjourn. Councillor Kavanagh.
That the proceedings of the City Council meeting of September 27th, 2023 be adjourned.
Is that carried? Carried. Thank you, everyone. Merci.
Good afternoon, bonjour à tous. My name is Kendra Titley and I will be your moderator. Je m'appelle Kendra Titley et je serai l'animatrice de ce point de presse. I will now invite each agency in alphabetical order to ask questions. You may ask one question with a follow-up. Par ordre alphabétique, j'invite maintenant chaque organisme à poser une question et une question de suivi. When asking your questions, please identify who your question is directed to, and if you are in council chambers, please use the microphone. Lorsque vous posez vos questions, veuillez indiquer à qui s'adresse votre question, et si vous êtes dans la salle de conseil, veuillez le faire au micro. We'll now start with Elise Skura at CBC Ottawa.
Thank you very much. My question's for the mayor. We know that there were different plans on the table for the QED active use from the plans from the NCC. And I understand that the NCC had been considering extending the program all the way to Preston rather than stopping it at Fifth Avenue. I wondered when that was on the table, kind of what your reaction was to that.
I've said all along that I think there are many places in our community where we can provide space for active transportation, but I don't feel that Queen Elizabeth Drive is the ideal place to do that. And so I would not support extending the active transportation space to Preston. And that's one of the reasons why I felt it was important for the community to have a dialogue about it this summer, because I heard from a lot of residents that they were concerned about traffic flow through that area. And so I thought it was important that we have a discussion about it and people have the opportunity to make their feelings known so that that would be taken into account when we make future decisions, when the NCC makes future decisions about it.
And just to clarify, when they were considering to have this extended, did they invite you into the conversations to allow you to have your say on that?
So I don't remember being invited into that conversation personally. I don't know if city staff were though, but I did not participate in any conversations about that.
Thank you very much. If I could ask just one more question. We know that Minister Sean Fraser has been going to to municipalities to discuss the Housing Accelerator Fund and what can be done in order to improve the application. I wondered if you have had any discussions with him or have any planned.
I'm expecting to meet with the minister in the days ahead. I met several times with the previous housing minister, Ahmed Hussein, and we had very productive discussions, and he was very supportive of Ottawa submitting an application as soon as the program opened. So I'm very excited about the prospect of accessing federal funds to support housing in our city.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go to Joe Tunney at CBC Radio.
Hi there. We'll stay on topic, but I just wanted to get the mayor's thought about this potential audit of the urban boundary and asking the province just to share your thoughts on that.
So the situation in Ottawa is quite different from the situation in Toronto, but I know that there have been concerns raised about one or two of the parcels of land in particular. As I've said before, I'm not a fan of petitioning other levels of government and expressing our opinion, but this is about our official plan. We need to work collaboratively with the provincial government. I have a strong working relationship with the provincial government. So it's simply a request to ask them to have another look, and if there's anything that needs to be reviewed, they can do so.
That's all for me. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. We'll now go to Leah Larocque at CTV Ottawa.
Hello. So my first question is for the mayor. So we got some new numbers from the city that showed that the city of Ottawa is owed millions of dollars in outstanding fines for photo radar and red light camera violations. Are you concerned that drivers are not paying their fines? And is there anything more the city can do to get people to pay their fines? Because that is revenue that the city is losing out on.
So I saw that headline. I'll be honest, I haven't read the story or looked into it in too much detail. Obviously, we want to collect as much as we can, but I would defer to staff on what might be done to address that and maybe a little bit more of the background of why we're in that situation.
We're actually fighting over who's going to answer the question here, but I can certainly start and Cyril can add some more. We always do find, I mean, people do pay their tickets and you kind of follow them through the process in terms of when they pay their tickets. Some people pay it when they get it immediately. Some people will take the time in terms of when they pay it. They wait for a reminder notice to come. And some people take, it requires action from the city to be able to do that. And so we've got various processes in place that will help us in terms of the collection of those matters, as well as tools that will force or enforce that payment as well. And I'll just check in with Cyril to add to that.
Yeah, I would just add to that a little bit. So what we did see and throughout the pandemic was a little bit of uptake in that percentage. Pre-pandemic, we were running around 4%, which is relatively normal low. And we, like when they said, we do everything we can to kind of go back and follow and collect that. But because of the pandemic and the closures, the shutdowns, there was a little bit of a lag, and then we're working towards closing off that and reducing that gap going forward.
The gap of unpaid.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
I think this one's for me.
Yes. So my next question actually is about the mystery of the Percy Street Bridge and how there is no date yet, and it keeps getting pushed back. I just wondered what your thoughts on that were. The transportation chair is saying he describes it as being crickets from the province, no communication. What's your take on the fact that it keeps getting pushed back and the lack of communication from the Ministry of Transportation?
So it is a provincial government bridge and it is a provincial government highway, so it's not our decision. We work closely with the provincial government to ensure that these things happen as smoothly as possible whenever they do happen. And in my experience, this is anecdotal observation, but for the most part, they seem to happen pretty smoothly and on schedule typically. I don't know the specific details of why it's been delayed a few times. There are a lot of different considerations that go into a decision to proceed with closing down a 400 series highway for several days. So I don't know what the factors are. You could ask them about that. But it's ultimately their decision.
But about the lack of communication from them about the reasons.
So I don't know, maybe Wendy, you could speak to what level of communication there has been, because it wouldn't be with me.
Yeah, thank you very much. We do communicate with them. Ultimately, as the mayor said, it is their decision in terms of when they're ready to go with that bridge replacement. We're very cooperative in terms of the assistance that the city will provide with respect to the closure to ensure that all of those services are in place. So as soon as we hear from them, then that planning will start, and we're here to help.
Thank you. Nous allons maintenant à Julien Paquette à la 3.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Maire.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. Question about for 1081 Carling. I want to know what you thought about this debate concerning the potential impact of the shade that those towers are going to have on the experimental farm. Do you worry about the shade that could affect the experimental farm, considering the development at 1081 Carling? Well, I know there are differing opinions in this matter, but for me, this is an opportunity to get new lodgings, new housing for the future inhabitants of Ottawa and the ones who live here now. With the new rules, it's very difficult to stop something of this kind without the correct processes. And I think that even if we have made a different decision today, the project will go ahead after a process. I think it is a good decision for the city of Ottawa.
I'll ask in English, but if it's for staff, but if you're welcome to answer in French if you can. It's regarding the urban expansion. I was just wondering about if you could give me an idea of the costs that would be necessary to develop some of the lands that were added to the urban boundary by the province after review of the OP. I know some of the lands we were in the reports. It was deemed a little too expensive, so just.
In terms of the costing, some of those lands were evaluated by staff during the official plan review. some of the other parcels were more costly. A lot of those costs will be confirmed in the upcoming infrastructure master plan that will be coming to council later this year. We're taking a look at all the urban expansion lands. And then, of course, a lot of those costs will fall to the developers to fund as well. So it's a combination. The city cost and the future development charge pieces are still to be determined.
Thank you.
Merci, Julien. Nous allons maintenant, we'll next go to Blair Crawford at the Ottawa Citizen. My apologies.
Just a question for the mayor about Councillor Plante's motion on the Brownfields development. You talked a bit about this in your decision to vote against it, and I think your vote might have been the deciding vote because of the majority that was needed to approve that. So can you expand on why you would oppose that, given that it is holding up housing that seems to be such a priority for the city?
During the election campaign last year, I traveled all over the city and I heard from residents over and over again that they didn't want to see tax dollars going to support the development of certain kinds of projects. And I think we all know about some of the projects that were approved in the last term of council that proved controversial. So I campaigned on a commitment to pause those programs, the CIP and the Brownfields, and to conduct a review and have staff report back on a different way forward. And we're waiting for that report. It's taken a little bit longer. Things have just been busy at City Hall. There's been a lot going on. So it's taken a little bit longer, but we expect that report in the coming weeks. And after we get that report and make decisions about how we go forward on Brownfields and CIPs, then we can consider every application at that point that fits the new criteria if we decide to change the criteria. So I wanted to honor my commitment to the residents of Ottawa that I would not approve any Brownfields or CIPs until the review had been conducted. Because I did hear from a lot of people, they don't want to see tax dollars going towards bailing out people who have contaminated a property, bailing out or supporting financially people who are building a property in a particular area where if they built it in a different area, they would pay 100% of the cost without a tax incentive from the government. So I wanted to make sure that we reviewed that and that we move forward with a new plan.
Thank you.
Oui. Pendant la campagne électorale.
So during the electoral campaign last year, I heard a lot of people, namely residents of Ottawa, who did not agree with financial incentive programs using their tax dollars for development. So I had promised then, and it was one of the commitments that I made to the residents of the City of Ottawa, that we would put a pause on these programs and these projects, and we would ask for a new approach, a new reassessment, a new system perhaps of looking at this. And in the next few weeks, we will have a report, a new report on the Brownfields and on the CIPs. So I'm waiting for that to happen. And we will decide at that point what the best approach for the future is. We will now go with Eric Pepin from Radio Canada. Well, precisely on that issue, I would like to hear what you have to say on this. One of the councillors talked about the GST, which the developers don't have to pay anymore. Do they need the city's money to be able to start their projects? Or do they have what they need to begin construction? Because, of course, we need housing in Ottawa, don't we? Yes, that's a fact. Of course, we need more housing in Ottawa and, of course, affordable housing. And I hope, and we've heard from people today that the plan in the next few weeks will contain an aspect of affordable housing. And I hope that will be the case. But of course, situations change a lot with housing. There's always new government programs, federal and provincial. So we're always in a process of evaluating the new incentive programs and new financing funding sources. So situations can change very quickly. but we will certainly hope that we will be able to build several housing with the program. What do you think about the Panda match game that's going to happen on Sunday? And unless I'm wrong, that it's the universities that are going to be paying the police surveillance charges for the Panda event. Both universities are going to be paying at least for part of those costs. That's what we were told yesterday. The question is, should we keep the Panda game or not? Well, how do you look at this? Because this is happening this weekend. Well, my goal is to have the Panda game, and we want to make sure, though, of course, that everybody is safe. The residents are safe, especially those who live nearby the stadium. But that hadn't been the case for the last few years. So there is a responsibility also on the part of the universities to settle this situation, to solve the situation, and to make sure that there are no problems associated. So Sunday, I will watch this game with a great interest, and I hope it'll be a great football match and nothing more than just a good game.
Situation very carefully over the last few years, and I know a lot of residents are concerned that the Panda game is more than a football game. If it was just a football game, I think everybody would love it. I remember going to the Panda game when I was in university. I think I even broadcast it one year on the Carleton University radio station, so it has a long tradition in our city. But what we've seen in the past few years is not part of that tradition, nor should it be. So I'm hoping that the universities will cooperate, and we'll have detailed plans to make sure that that's not happening in the future, because we don't want that in our city. It comes at a cost. It's disruptive to neighbors. So I'll be watching closely on Sunday and hoping that there's an effective plan in place.
Thank you. This concludes today's media availability. Ceci conclut le point de presse d'aujourd'hui. Thank you. Merci.
Merci.
Merci.